In most relationships, one partner is ready for the separation or divorce before the other. And this creates a lot of friction because if you're that partner, you just want to get things done. You're tired of being in a relationship you no longer want to be in. You're worried about what your separation may look like. Are you gonna get a fair deal? Are your kids gonna be okay? All these things are brewing in your mind, and you feel like your hands are tight because your partner doesn't wanna do anything about it, and you don't want to hire a lawyer and go after them. You don't want to create more conflict. You just want to do things peacefully, but they just won't move. And so today I want to give you three insights, three things that to think about and to have in mind. And they are going to help you in reacting to them and in managing, trying to get them on board, trying to get you both on the same page. Here they are. The first one is you have to understand that they are at a different cycle in the grief, or a different step in the grief cycle than you are. So the grief cycle is usually a denial, anger, bargaining. This is when they go, no, let's go back to marriage counseling, let's try things out again, let's go on a vacation. The fourth one is, maybe you say no, or I'm done, or there's no point. They go into depression, and then they get to acceptance. So you're probably pretty close to acceptance. Sometimes even in the grief cycle, you're kind of going back and forth, but you're predominantly in one stage, more than the others. For them, they're probably early on in the grief cycle because they just have not accepted that this is happening to your relationship. The second piece of insight that's going to help you is kind of related to the grief cycle, is that you have reached your fed up point. There has been maybe a catalyst that happened between you where there's that one other thing that they did and it didn't sit well with you, and you decided at that point that you're gonna, you don't want this relationship anymore. For some people, is finding out that they are cheating. For others, it's, for the first time in our life together, he didn't pay for my coffee. For some people, it's I just cannot live another day where there's anger, there's fights, there's, all this negativity. So for you, you've reached that fed up point where a catalyst happened between you in your mind, and that's after that, that's your cutoff. For them, they haven't reached that, even though they might have experienced the same things that you have, but to them, they brushed it off. It wasn't a big deal. They could still live with you and be with you even though these things happened. So until they reach a catalyst that's gonna change the way they think of the relationship, they're not gonna catch up to you. And sometimes the catalyst for them can be you moving out, or you deciding that you want to change the way you guys pay for things, you want to start separating things. The catalyst for them could be something that relates to you, or it could be something that they kind of reach to on their own. And the third piece of insight that I think is very helpful, and it's cool because you have control over this one, is understanding that you cannot control them, you can control yourself. You have to understand that you can influence them, you can influence other people, you could approach things in ways that resonate with them, but you cannot change them, you can influence them. So how do you influence someone that it's tough to deal with right now? It starts with how you actually show up. For many people, a lot of times, women who have always been supportive and taking care of the family, taking care of their spouse, doing all the things they need to do, and kind of not looking after themselves, and now separation comes. Maybe it's in the way that they start to put themselves first. They start to give themselves more power and more space, and they start to verbalize their needs. So it's in the way that you are gonna show up in conversations. It's in the way that you're gonna um, be clear minded when you talk to your spouse and really know what it is that you want and what you want to help them understand. It's in the way that you are open to influence from them, perhaps. For you to just show up to a kind of a conversation with them and say, this is what I want, and this is the only way that I'm gonna accept I get it. They're not gonna be open to your influence. You wanna be open. You wanna ask them about what's important to them, and how can you get to a peaceful separation or a peaceful breakup without so much harm, without so much animosity, all these things. So the three things again are: understand that you are in a different grief grief pattern or grief position in the grief cycle than they are. The second piece is you have reached your fed up point in the past. At some point, it was maybe a week ago, it was maybe 3 years ago. They have not. Doesn't mean that you wait for them, but it means that you understand that they just have not gone through that. And the third piece is understanding that you can influence them. You cannot control them. And by influencing them, first you have to show up differently. You have to show up with clarity. You have to show up with openness. You have to show up with the ability and the understanding that it's going to be a compromise, whatever it is that you are trying to resolve with them. I hope these help next time you think of where you're at and what you need to do and what kind of communication you want to have with them. Think of these three insights, and I'm sure they're gonna help you have a better conversation and a better type of communication than you've had in the past.